Hey there. I'm glad you're here. Wherever you are, whatever kind of day you've had, you made it. And now, it's time to slow everything down. This isn't a story about glory, not about the roar of the crowd or the clash of blades. This is a day that no one saw, a day lived in the dark, where the stone stayed cold and the sun never reached. Somewhere above, morning came, but down here, there was no morning, just breath, rising and fading, just chains and damp stone, just the quiet rhythm of survival. So dim the lights, let your breath slow, and drift with me beneath the Colosseum. And if this kind of quiet storytelling brings you peace, feel free to subscribe. No pressure. We'll be here whenever you need a little stillness. The Colosseum above was waking, but down here, beneath the stones, morning didn't arrive in light. It arrived in cold. The floor was wet. The stones breathed with last night's chill. A quiet draft moved through the narrow corridors, brushing against the backs of rough-hewn walls. Somewhere in the dark, iron links shifted. A cough echoed, then stopped. The world paused again. A boy sat on a block of limestone, wrapped in wool cloth that smelled of sweat and mold. His eyes hadn't opened yet, but he was awake. He listened. That was the first duty of the morning. Listening. He heard a rat moving, water dripping, a boot heel, brushing sand, the muffled growl of something caged. Each sound had weight. Each one meant something. Down here, nothing was truly silent, but nothing spoke loud either. The boy stretched his toes, slowly. The stone beneath him didn't yield. He rubbed his hands together, one, then the other. The skin on his knuckles was split. The air stung. No one called for him. Not yet. Overhead, faint footsteps passed. Arena workers. Maybe the butcher. Maybe the man with the keys. It didn't matter. They belonged to another world. The world above. Down here, under the Colosseum. Time flowed slower. It didn't tick. It breathed. He stood, carefully, stiff legs, a sore spine. He moved toward the basin. Cold water waited. He dipped his fingers in. The sting felt like fire. He pressed his hands to his face, then rubbed his eyes. Now, he was truly awake. He didn't speak. There was no one to hear, and even if there were, words didn't matter much in a place like this. He picked up the iron bucket and walked into the dark. The bucket was old. Its handle creaked when he lifted it, metal grinding softly against metal. Water sloshed inside, cold and dark, gathered from a stone basin that never dried, not even in summer. He moved down the corridor, left foot, right foot, bare soles brushing against sand and pebble. The bucket swayed, its weight shifted, water bumping the rim. The corridor opened into a chamber, small, round, walls made from layered brick. There was no torch, only the breath of morning curling in the corners. 3 cages sat in the shadows. 2 were empty. 1 was not. He set the bucket down. The animal inside did not stir. Not yet. It was sleeping, or pretending. He sat beside the cage. The floor was cool beneath him. The water rippled softly. He waited. Time passed in droplets. Each one fell, then vanished. He leaned forward, hands braced on knees. The beast stirred. A sound like gravel moving through a pipe. A rough breath. The boy didn't flinch. He'd heard it before. He reached into the bucket, cupped some water, held it forward. Slowly, the beast's nose emerged. Its breath was warm, too warm. It drank. 3 gulps, then retreated into shadow. That was enough. The boy sat again, this time with hands in his lap. He didn't look at the cage. No need. The walls around him held stories, etched in soot and scratch marks. Someone had drawn a sun, someone else, a bird with no wings. A name was carved low, Lucio. The bucket still held water. He wouldn't spill it. He lifted it again, stood, and turned back toward the hall. No one spoke, not the beast, not the stone, not the boy, only the bucket, creaking, soft and steady. He walked slower now. The bucket was heavier than before, not in weight, but in thought. Each step stirred the dust. Tiny clouds rose from the floor, then settled again. Software gray, timeless. The hallway turned left, then right, then straight. He didn't count the doors. There were too many. Some led nowhere. Some hadn't been opened in years. Some weren't meant to be opened. His footsteps echoed, not sharply, but like memory, faint and far away. The walls were getting closer, not physically, but in feeling. They pressed. The deeper he went, the thicker the air became. He stopped beside a heavy wooden door. Its edges were swollen from dampness. Moss clung to the base. It hadn't moved in days. He didn't open it. He listened instead. Inside, silence. Not the quiet kind, but the kind that watches you back. He moved on. His shoulder brushed the wall. Dust clung to his skin. The stones were warm here even though there was no light. Somewhere above he heard movement, the creak of a wheel, a clank of metal. The arena had begun its day. Down here it still slept. The boy paused beneath a narrow arch. Above him a shaft of sunlight reached through a vent, barely enough to see, but enough to show the dust dancing in its path. He stood still, watched it, the way it moved without effort, the way it rose and fell, never touching the ground. He raised a finger. The dust parted, then returned, as if nothing had happened. He moved on, one more step, then another. Dust rose, then fell again, and still, no one spoke. The corridor widened, the scent changed, no longer damp stone, now straw, sweat, and something deeper, a scent that lingered behind teeth. He knew this scent. He followed it every morning. The room ahead was tall and dark. Iron gates stood like ribs, curved, black, rusting at the hinges. Behind them, movement, not loud, but heavy, a low huff, the scrape of claws. The boy set down the bucket again. This one was for them. 4 cages, 2 full, 1 broken, 1 waiting. He moved to the first. A lion watched him, eyes half open, not curious, not hostile, just awake. He didn't speak, didn't reach. He poured the water into a shallow bowl, the metal clinking softly. The lion didn't move. It had seen mornings before. The boy stepped back, then to the next cage. This one was empty, a smear of blood still fresh on the bars. Not cleaned, no one would. He looked for a moment, just one, then moved on. The next cage held a bear. Its breath was slow, measured, thick as fog. The boy repeated the ritual. Water, step back, silence. He didn't look it in the eye. No one did. The last cage was quiet. Nothing stirred. Still, he placed the water, just in case. He sat on a crate. The straw shifted beneath him. He watched the cages. He always watched them. Sometimes they watched back. A rat passed by his foot. He didn't move. This was the morning. This was all it asked of him. Wait, watch, water, stillness. The boy blinked once, then again. The iron groaned. The lion yawned. A door creaked open somewhere far above. But down here, nothing changed. The wooden bowl was old, carved by hand. Its edges were smooth from years of use, its base slightly cracked. It always sat in the same place, on a low shelf near the back wall, beside a stack of folded cloths, clean but never white. The boy picked up the bowl. It was light, dry. He placed it beside the bucket. Then with both hands he poured slowly. Water touched wood. It made no sound, not here. He crouched down, watching it fill. The level rose, then stopped, just below the rim. He set the bucket aside. His fingers rested on the edge of the bowl. He didn't move them. He just sat there. The water was still, a perfect mirror, until a drop from the ceiling struck its center. A ripple, one, then silence again. He dipped a cloth into the bowl, wrung it gently, folded it twice. He wiped the edge of a cage door, then the metal latch, then the bars. It wasn't about cleaning, not really. It was about rhythm and presence and repetition. Every day, the same gesture. Every day, the same silence. He placed the cloth back, refolded it. The lion didn't watch him. The bear didn't stir, but he moved as if they did. He poured the remaining water into the sand, slowly, carefully, as if returning it to the ground. He set the bowl down, back where it belonged, then stood, cracked his knuckles, rolled his shoulders. The air was warmer now, just slightly. Above, the sun had fully risen. But here, morning lingered like a question without an answer. He picked up the bucket again. Time to leave. The boy stepped into a narrow hall. His feet moved slower now. The stone walls on either side were closer than before. The air held weight. Far above, a door opened, and somewhere beyond it, the crowd exhaled. It wasn't a cheer. Not yet. Just the low hum of 1,000 people settling into silence. He paused near a stone column, pressed his back against it, and waited. The iron bucket hung at his side, still half full. The corridor trembled, just slightly. A sound moved through the stone. From above, heavy, rolling, a gate sliding open. Then, a roar, not the crowd, not yet. This roar was flesh, muscle, mouth, the sound of a predator meeting sunlight. He didn't flinch. He'd heard it before, but something in him tightened. A small part, somewhere deep. The roar echoed, bounced between stone, fell like thunder, then faded. The crowd responded, softly at first, then louder still. It rose like smoke, filled the hallways. Down here the roar lost its shape. It became a vibration. He stepped away from the wall, kept moving. The noise trailed behind him, as if it had missed him. He didn't look up. There was nothing up there for him. Only the arena, only the sun, only the world that would never know his name. He adjusted the bucket. It creaked against the hook. The corridor grew quiet again, even as the stone still trembled. He kept walking. He entered a storage alcove. No doors, just 3 stone walls and a dirt floor. Inside, a crate, a rope, a torn sandal, and the sound of nothing. He sat, back against the wall, bucket beside him, hands folded. He had nowhere else to be, no one to report to, no words to say. He waited. The air felt thick, as if the morning had been boiled down and left behind in this one, still room. Far above, the crowd shifted. The roars had faded. Now, just the occasional crack of a whip or the clang of metal gates swinging closed. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, just to feel the dark. A draft passed near his cheek, cool, almost kind. He listened for the lion, the bear, the breath of the caged ones. Nothing. Even they were waiting. The room smelled of dust and rope, the kind of scent that settles into cloth and doesn't leave. He placed his hands flat on the floor, felt the stone, felt the grains of dirt, felt time stretch out like a thread, pulled long, pulled slow, somewhere. A bell rang, not a sharp bell, a distant one, lunch for the workers above, bread, cheese, warm wine if they were lucky. Down here, no bell. The boy opened his eyes. No change in light. No change in sound. Still, something felt different. He wasn't sure what. Maybe it was the way the dirt no longer clung to his fingers. Maybe it was the silence turning into company. He didn't move. He waited. And the room waited with him. The storeroom air was warmer now, not from the sun, but from breath, from skin, from the slow rising of body heat trapped in stillness. The boy adjusted his back, stiff, sore. The straw he sat on crunched beneath him, old, dry, sharp at the edges. He pulled his knees toward his chest, resting his arms across them. The wool cloth around his shoulders had grown damp. Sweat clung to the fabric. It smelled of salt and hours. Above, the arena groaned. The crowd shifted. Something heavy was dragged across the floorboards. He imagined the lines being drawn in sand, the weapons being chosen, the breath held behind every eye. But he wasn't there. He was here, with straw and sweat and silence. A drop of water rolled down the side of the bucket. It traced the metal slowly, left a clean line in the dust. He watched it disappear into the dirt. That felt like something. He reached behind him, grabbed a handful of straw, and rubbed it between his palms. It scratched. It crumbled. Tiny yellow shards scattered into his lap. The scent was sharp, like sun-dried grass left too long in the heat. He breathed in, then out. Once. No more. A muffled sound came from the corridor. Not footsteps, just weight shifting. Someone or something on the move. He didn't turn, didn't look. The straw shifted beneath him again. The heat lingered, settled on his skin like a blanket he couldn't shake. He lay back, just a little, shoulders to stone. The rough wall met his spine. He closed his eyes. But only for a minute, just a minute. He stood, slowly, let the ache settle in his knees before moving again. The hallway curved. He followed it, hand trailing along the wall. The stone was smoother here, touched more often, by boots, by carts, by time. At the end of the corridor, a gate, iron, tall, bolted shut. Beside it sat a man, cross-legged, gray in the beard, one hand resting on a hook of keys. He didn't look up. The boy stopped a few steps away, waited. The man didn't speak. He rarely did. His role wasn't to welcome, only to decide when to open and when not to. The keys rattled once. A shift of weight, not intention. The boy stayed still. They had seen each other every day, never shared a word. There was no need. What passed between them was older than language, a rhythm. The boy nodded. Once. The man returned it. Barely. That was enough. He stepped back, didn't try to pass, didn't ask. The gate wasn't for him. He turned, walked back the way he came. As he walked, he thought about the man. How long had he sat there? How many times had he turned a key without ever standing up? Did he dream of the world beyond the gate? Or was this hallway, this air, this silence, his entire world? He didn't know. And it wasn't his place to ask. Some doors were not meant to open, not for everyone. The hallway narrowed again. It always did near this part. The walls pressed in just enough to notice. He walked slower. His hand brushed the stones. They were warm. Not from the sun, from skin. Many hands had touched these walls, not out of habit, but hope. He stopped at the familiar place, a patch of stone, worn smoother than the rest, finger-shaped, palm-shaped. Someone had prayed here, maybe many, not aloud, not with words, just hands and breath and waiting. He placed his hand over the spot, not to pray, not really, just to remember that others had stood here before him. He closed his eyes. The silence was deeper now, as if even the air knew not to move too fast. He inhaled slowly, held it, then let it go. Somewhere a whisper echoed, It wasn't his. It didn't matter. He looked down. Someone had left a small offering, a strip of cloth tied to a rusted nail on the wall. It fluttered just slightly, as if moved by breath that wasn't his. He didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The cloth said enough. He stepped back, lowered his gaze, then kept walking. The corridor remained still behind him. The warmth faded. The stone felt harder again. He didn't speak, but something inside him, some part he couldn't name, had grown quieter, and that was enough. The next hallway curved in silence. Its walls were taller here, colder, less touched. He slowed his steps. The air felt thinner, not heavy, just emptied. He reached a small alcove, unmarked, no torch, no purpose, but he always stopped here. On the far wall, barely visible, was a name, carved by hand, rough letters, uneven, shallow. Lucio. He didn't know who Lucio was. No one did. There were no stories, no songs, no bloodline, just a name, scratched into stone with a dull object and quiet urgency. He stared at it, not reading, feeling. The letters had softened over time, eroded, faded, but still here, still speaking. He traced the L with one finger, gently, as if waking a memory that didn't belong to him. Was Lucio a prisoner? A fighter? A boy like him? Had Lucio waited here, like he had? Touched the same wall? Felt the same cold? He didn't know. But he stayed, just a minute longer, as if the name itself was listening back. The corridor beyond him waited, but he didn't move. Something in the silence had shape here. A name was enough to hold that shape. He lowered his hand, let the letters go, turned and walked on. He didn't speak the name, didn't need to, but it stayed with him, as quiet as the stone. The storeroom was darker now. Afternoon light above did not reach this far. He opened the wooden crate. Its lid creaked, soft, tired wood giving way without protest. Inside, meat, wrapped in cloth, already starting to warm. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. He had done this before. He pulled out 2 bundles, held them carefully, one in each hand, dripping slightly. He moved slowly through the corridor. Step, balance, breathe. His body knew the weight, not heavy, but uneven. The cages were waiting. The lion was first. It stood before the bars, still, watching. Its eyes followed him but made no threat, only presence. He set the bundle down, slid it forward with a stick. No words, no sound. The lion reached, teeth closed, tore once, then silence again. The boy stepped back, turned to the next cage. The bear sat in shadow, breath slow, head low. He placed the second bundle the same way, pushed it gently. The bear sniffed, lifted it with one claw, turned away. No growl, no challenge, just eating, just surviving. He wiped his hands on the edge of his tunic. The blood left faint marks. He didn't mind. This was the part no one saw, the part before the arena, before the noise, before the blood meant something. Here it was just food. He closed the crate, secured the lid. The smell still lingered, faint, raw, but the beasts were calm, and he felt nothing, not fear, not pride, only the next task, only the next minute, only the next breath. He returned the stick to its place beside the crate, wiped his hands once more. The cloth was already stained. He stood still, listened. Nothing moved. The lion was curled in straw, eyes half shut, not watching. The bear had finished eating. Its breath came slower now, almost a snore. The cages were quiet. The hallway outside was quiet. Even the stones beneath his feet had fallen still. The silence returned. Not sudden, not like a door closing, more like a slow tide, rising over everything. He stepped into the corridor, closed the gate behind him. The latch clicked, softly. He leaned against the wall, let his head fall back. The stone was cool. His spine found its shape again. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Above, the crowd was louder now. Their voices rose and fell like wind against a canopy of fabric. But down here, it didn't reach him, not fully, just a pulse, just a suggestion. He closed his eyes. Time had lost its edges. Minutes no longer meant movement, only breath, only posture, only stillness. He counted 7 heartbeats, then stopped counting. There was no need. The body remembered its rhythm. The place had returned to what it was. Stone, air, bone. He didn't feel tired, but he didn't feel awake either. Just here. That was enough. The first tremor was gentle, like a breath pressed into the floor. Then another, stronger. He didn't move. He had felt this before, many times. The crowd above was on its feet. Their rhythm spilled downward through columns, through tunnels, through stone, the arena floor beating like a drum. He placed his hand flat against the wall, felt it hum, a vibration not sharp but steady, not fear, not danger, just noise without voice. He stepped slowly into the corridor. Dust drifted down from the ceiling, tiny flakes, silent snowfall of the underground. A growl rose in the distance, not the beasts, not this time. Something else, something human, or close enough. A shout echoed, brief, sharp. Then metal struck metal. He paused, waited. The floor shook again, louder now, as if the very earth responded. He moved to a narrow support arch, leaned against it, let the shaking pass through his body. The lion in its cage stirred, a low sound, not fear, not hunger, recognition. They both knew what this meant. The fight had begun. Up there, sun, sand, blood. Down here, stone, breath, memory. He closed his eyes, felt the floor rise, then fall, rise, then fall, like a heartbeat too large to name. He didn't count the tremors. They'd end soon. They always did. And when they stopped, silence would return. The air had changed. Again, not colder, not warmer, just older, as if the hours themselves had exhaled. He walked slowly through the corridor, the walls now darker, not in color, but in mood. Shadows clung longer to the floor, to his steps, to the edges of the cages. The lion no longer moved. It had curled again, still but awake. The bear had turned its back to the bars, its breath deep, like sleep, but not sleep. He didn't speak, didn't even nod. The silence here was too wide now, too stretched. He passed the old nail in the wall, the one with the strip of cloth. It no longer fluttered. The air had stilled. Even dust seemed tired. It hovered, unsure whether to rise or fall. He knelt near the basin, ran his fingers over the rim. The water had dried, evaporated without being used. That felt right. Some things didn't need an ending, only an absence. He touched the floor, cool, unchanged, then sat, back against the same spot he had used that morning. He looked up. Nothing had changed, but everything had drifted. The day had stretched like shadow across stone, thin, quiet, slow. He let his hands fall into his lap, closed his eyes, let the weight settle. No one called for him. No task pulled him up. The world above still moved, but down here, the only thing left was time. And time wasn't in a hurry. He opened his eyes, and the darkness was deeper, not black, not sudden, just settled. The kind of darkness that arrived without asking, that waited until no one was looking. He stood, joints stiff, bones slow. His hand reached for the wall, steadying, not guiding. He knew this path. He didn't need to see it. The corridor ahead was quieter now. The stone, heavier, as if it too was trying to rest. Up above, no more shouts, no cheers, no metal, only the distant scrape of benches pushed aside, sand being swept, ropes dragged. The day was ending. Even if he never saw the sky, he knew. He could feel it in the way the floor stopped humming. The world above was packing itself away. He paused beside a narrow grate. Light sometimes reached here, a single thread on lucky afternoons. Now there was nothing, not even a glow. He placed his palm on the stone, still warm, but barely. He didn't sigh, didn't yawn. Fatigue wasn't loud in places like this. It simply arrived and made itself at home. He walked slowly, retracing morning steps, through the long tunnel, past the name in the wall, past the gate, past the crates. He returned the basin to its place, folded the cloth, even if it hadn't been used. The lion was already asleep, the bear still. He sat one last time beside the bucket, empty now, and still he waited, as if the last light hadn't quite left yet, as if somewhere in the stone a glow might return. He was almost asleep when he heard it. A voice, dry, low, cracked like old paper. Not a shout, not even a call. Just sound, human, barely. It came from somewhere deeper, beyond the cages, beyond the path he normally walked. He opened his eyes, but didn't move. Listened. It came again. 3 words, or maybe 2. He couldn't tell. Not clear enough, not loud enough, but real. He stood, carefully, left the bucket behind. The corridor narrowed. He followed the sound as far as he could, but it stopped. Silence returned so quickly that he wondered if he'd imagined it. He placed his hand on the wall. It was cool again. He waited for the voice to return. It didn't. Not a whisper, not a breath, not even a footstep. Still. He felt something, like being watched, but not by eyes, watched by memory. He turned around, walked back the way he came. As he passed the cages, the animals didn't stir. Not a twitch, not a sound. He sat again. Same place, same spot. But something had shifted. A crack in the silence. A name he didn't hear but somehow knew. Maybe the voice belonged to the boy who carved Lucio. Maybe not. Maybe it didn't matter. It had reached him, and that, in this place, was rare. He rested his head against the wall, closed his eyes again. The voice didn't return, but its echo had left a thread, and he held it in the quiet. It began at his feet, a quiet chill spreading through the stone, the kind that crept, not fell. He shifted, felt it move up his spine, into his shoulders. The warmth from the day was leaving now, not rushing, draining, slowly, steadily, without sound. He rubbed his arms, once, then again, not for heat, just for memory, a reminder that he was still here, still breathing. The lion exhaled in its sleep. The sound was deep, steady, the kind that didn't wake you, but told you you weren't alone. The cold slid deeper. Walls gave it back. Air carried it. The basin was empty, but even the wood beneath it felt cooler now. He stood, stretched his legs as far as the room allowed. His knees cracked. He didn't mind. Above, no sound, not even the usual scrape of closing gates. No tools, no voices, just quiet and cold. He moved to the far wall, sat down again, same way as always. The cloth around his shoulders offered little, but it was habit, and in a place like this, habit was warmth. His hands folded in his lap, eyes closed. He knew this part of the day. It was not rest, not sleep, just return. The air was still. The dark was thicker. Nothing left to do, nothing new to feel. Only the cold, rising again. Same as it had this morning, same as it would tomorrow. Nothing moved. Not the lion, not the bear, not the dust hovering above the floor. Even the bucket, empty, still,
seemed more solid now. He sat, back to the wall, hands in his lap, eyes half closed. No sound, no thought worth naming. The cold had stopped spreading. It had found its shape, fit itself around everything, like a second skin you forget you're wearing. He didn't shiver, didn't blink much, didn't need to. The stone beneath him felt like memory, not pain, not comfort, just presence. He breathed in, then out. The rhythm didn't change, didn't push forward, didn't pull back. Above, the city slept. Even the Colosseum had fallen quiet. No wheels, no voices, no fire crackling in the grates. Only this stillness. He thought of nothing, not by choice, but because there was nothing left to think. Everything that had happened had folded in on itself, disappeared into the corners where the light used to reach. He leaned his head to the side, let it rest, let the quiet press around him. The lion didn't move, the bear didn't stir, the grate no longer showed light, but he didn't look for it. What would it matter now? He didn't speak, not even inside, because here, tonight, in this place, nothing moved, and in that, everything felt finally right.
Night had come, not suddenly, not sharply, but like a blanket pulled gently over everything. He didn't see it arrive, but he felt it. The cold had stopped moving. It was now just here. The walls no longer hummed. The floor no longer pulsed. Even his breath barely made a sound. He lay on his side, wool cloth tucked near his neck, eyes closed, not asleep, not awake, just drifting. The lion didn't stir. The bear didn't snore. Silence had taken every corner of this place. Even the dust had settled. He heard his own heartbeat. Faint, low, steady. It didn't rush, didn't fight. It was allowed to be slow. Time, whatever it had meant today, was done measuring. There would be another morning, another task, another breath. But not now. Now there was only this. Stone. Cold. Weight. Dark. He moved one hand, just slightly, to feel the floor beneath his palm. Still solid. Still real. He pressed his fingers into the stone. It didn't move. It never had. He let out one last breath. Quiet. Warm against the air. Then, nothing. Not because he was gone, but because the day was. It had lived, moved, echoed, and faded. And now, beneath the Colosseum, night held everything in place.